Okay, hi everyone. So in this first part of this video clip, we're going to look at weather forecasting. In another video clip then I'll do the weather instruments. But first of all, we're going to look at what is the weather, how do we gather the weather, who does it for us. Because like every single one of us rely on the weather. It doesn't matter what age you are, weather affects our daily life. So it is important to have a good understanding of it. Okay, so first of all, we look at the term meteorology. That's just the study of weather. Okay, any of you studying French with us know that la météo is the weather forecast. So meteorology is the whole study of our weather. And like I said, we depend on it every single day. It kind of dictates and it says what we can and can't do. So it's important that we have someone studying the weather for us and break it down easier. Meteorology is studying many different parts of the weather at least once a day. So they actually kind of gather the data all throughout the day really. So what information are they gathering for us? Temperature. So like today now I think they said it's going to go up to like 17 degrees and it could be back down to like 9 degrees during the week tomorrow. So you need to know how to wrap up. Atmospheric pressure is the amount of pressure in the air. For example, to make that simple for you now to understand, at the moment the weather is beautiful out there. It's lovely and dry, it's calm and it's sunny. Okay, that's high pressure. So there's heavy pressure, high pressure pressing down on top of the earth. If it was low pressure, you tend with low pressure to get a lot of rain and wind and just bad weather. Okay. Humidity is the amount of water vapor that's in the air. You know what water vapor is. That's when the sun soaks up the water and turns it into a gas. That water that's in the air, we can't see it. It's just the water present in the air as water vapor. Okay. And if there's a lot of water vapor in the air, that's humidity, that's high humidity. Often now you might have heard your parents saying, my God, it's very dead outside. You know, you find you'd be kind of hard to breathe and it's very dead, very humid. Wind speed, obviously the more windier it is, the more of a nuisance it is. And what direction is it blowing in from? That might even affect your playing of matches and things like that. Precipitation, that's rain, hail, sleet, snow, and sunshine, which we love. Okay, so meteorology, if you're working in that job, you're gathering all of those 6 different bits of detail. Okay, so what is the weather? Like, we know what it is, but how do you explain it to somebody? The weather is the state of the atmosphere at any given time. Now lads, you're looking at the picture on the left and that's the earth that we're living on. Our earth is surrounded by a load of gases, and those gases protect our earth. Our gases can include oxygen and nitrogen and carbon dioxide and methane. Okay, so we're surrounded by a big blanket and layer of gases. So that atmosphere protects the earth. Okay, in that atmosphere, there's so much happening. Okay, the weather that's inside the atmosphere can be hot, it can be cold, it can be wet, dry, calm, stormy, clear or cloudy. Okay, weather can change in minutes. You could look out the window and it could be lovely and hot and lovely and dry, and then the next thing 5 minutes later you get a rain shower. So weather is changeable from hour to hour, day to day. Climate is different. Climate is over a long period of time, over 30 years or so. Like our climate in Ireland is different from the Mediterranean climate, which is different from the climate in the Sahara Desert. Okay, now if you look at the picture on the left hand side, you can see the earth and you can see the atmosphere above us. The atmosphere is made up of loads of different layers. The closest layer of the atmosphere to us is called the troposphere. So on the right hand side it says the troposphere is where most of our weather occurs. Okay, so it's the closest layer to us. So that's where we get our rain and our sun and our wind, etc. There is just a picture of what you'd find if you went on looking on the weather online. But a lot of people don't understand the terms, but hopefully as we go throughout this chapter you'll understand it, about humidity and wind speed and temperature, etc. So like I said, meteorology is the study of weather. So a weather forecast is what your parents will watch probably in the evening and probably kill you if you interrupt them while they're watching it, because we're glued to it. The weather forecast presenter breaks it down to simple terms for us. They predict, you know, so it's a hard job for them. Like, they're predicting what the weather will be like for Kanturk, for the south of Ireland. So the meteorologist is the person that prepares and predicts the weather forecast. Okay. They study information that they gather from a number of sources. So like you have weather stations, we've like 25 of them around Ireland. We've weather satellites that pick up the weather out in the atmosphere. Radar stations pick up the weather up in the atmosphere. Gas rigs have weather stations on them. They feed the information back to us. And even ships out in the ocean have weather equipment on them to pick up the weather. So we've loads of places that feed back the information to us and tell us what the weather is going to be like. The meteorologist takes all that information and puts it into a really simple report for us to make it easy for us to understand. Okay, so how do we gather all the weather data? How does it get to us in our homes and on our phones? First of all, we have weather satellites. So it's mad, like they put these weather satellites up into the atmosphere. Now, if you look on the right-hand side, the weather satellites typically are placed either in the thermosphere or the exosphere, which are the top two layers of the atmosphere. Okay, so they're put pretty high up. All right, so you're talking about like up to 10,000 kilometers, 30,000 kilometers high even. So these weather satellites are quite, regular sized pieces of equipment, and they orbit, they move around the Earth, and they take pictures. They take pictures of the cloud systems that are moving. So if they see a load of cloud building up over America, we might know that that might be moving on to Ireland pretty soon. So they gather all the information. They look at what it looks like up in the atmosphere. They take pictures for us, and they send them back down. So they're instruments that orbit the Earth. So they scan the atmosphere, okay? And they gather data and they send it back down to us. So they're often referred to as geostationary weather satellites. So they can operate at heights of about 35,000 kilometers above us. So it's mad to think what scientists and engineers have come up with to make these. Okay, so they typically move around the equator, okay, and they take the pictures from there. So that's a weather satellite. You also have weather balloons. So it's like a gigantic balloon that you'd have at a party. But like these are weather balloons. They're huge. So they're filled with helium. They can weigh about 4 pounds. They rise up to about 100,000 feet up into the air. So they do go up pretty high. If I pictured there for you, I don't. They're in the stratosphere. So if I just go back to that picture there. So like I said, most of our weather happens in the troposphere, the layer of the atmosphere closest to us. The weather balloons typically go up just above that, just to tell us what's on the way down, basically. They tell us what's on the way down to us. What else can I tell you about the weather balloons? So they're filled with helium. They have a parachute attached to them. And at the bottom of the parachute then, at the very, very bottom of it, is a box. And the box is full of weather equipment. So thermometers, everything that will pick up the humidity. So basically, we send these weather balloons up to tell us what's on the way down to us, okay? Because the weather is forming up there. As the weather balloon moves up high up into the atmosphere, it swells. It can even swell to the size of a truck. Now, when it gets to that point, it bursts, okay? And the parachute will open up and it'll bring back down that box with all the weather equipment inside it. Hundreds of these weather balloons are released across the Earth daily. So basically it tells us, is there a tornado on the way, storms, flash floods? When that parachute with that box of weather equipment arrives back down to Earth, obviously the meteorologist and the person working in the weather station will open up the box, take out the weather equipment and read all that information. So like, it's mad to think the amount of work that goes on every single day. So they can be released up to 2 times a day, okay? Right, weather radar stations, we have them across Ireland as well. As you can see, the big tower, right? And it's like a big golf ball on the top of it. And you can see kind of like weather, like antenna in the background as well. And think of like the TV dish and satellite that you have on the side of your house. They're basically dishes and satellites and antennas. They basically send beams and waves out into the air and up into the atmosphere. And they pick up what's the precipitation going to be like. So they pick up if we're going to get precipitation. And it basically, the waves travel up into the atmosphere and they come back down. And they feed that information then into the computers. Okay, so it's mad to think what can happen. There's a small little weather station on the ground. I'll talk more about all that little equipment later on. The weather buoys, you'll see them out in the sea. So it's really only the fishermen and the people shipping that will see them. So the weather boys basically collect, like on that little like yellow boat that you can see, it loads of weather equipment on it. So they collect the weather and the ocean data. So they'll pick up the air temperature. What's the humidity like? Is there a lot of water vapor in the air? What's the surface temperature like in the sea? How strong are the waves? What's the wind speed? What direction is the wind coming in from? So that really helps the fishermen to know, is it safe to go out? Is it safe to do shipping across the channels? It's very important that they know that information. Also, on the ships, on the very big ships, they have their own little weather station. So they have loads of equipment because they have to. It just makes it safer for them to travel. So they have radar equipment that picks up, picks up the precipitation that might be on the way. They have kind of satellite dishes sticking up at the height up above the ship that'll pick up what the weather is, temperature, everything is going to be like. So it's mad to think that they have all that going on. So once we gather all that information, that's sent back to Met Éireann headquarters. So Met Éireann are the crowd in Ireland that's responsible for telling us what the weather is going to be like. Okay, so all that weather data is sent back to the computers in Met Éireann, and inside in the computers, the meteorologist basically takes all that data, all that information on temperature, rain, wind speed, and they predict what the weather is going to be like. They're going to say, right, it's going to come tomorrow, it's going to come in 5 days' time, and it's going to particularly hit Kanturk worst, but Dublin won't see it as bad. So they're really forecasting and looking ahead. So they're taking all this detail and simplifying it down for us. So how do they give it to us? They give it to us in maps, charts, weather reports, depending on who will read it. Like you and I at the end of this chapter will be able to read the detailed reports. Someone that has never studied this before will just depend on the person on the news forecasting the weather to tell them in simple forms, is it going to rain or not tomorrow? Evelyn Cusack in the picture there is the head of Met Éireann. She's the head of the forecasting. So the buck stops with her, like all those times when we had storms and they closed us and gave us a red weather warning. Really, she's the one that will finally make the decision on that. So how do we get the weather forecasts? We can get it on the TV, watch it after the news, the radio, every hour, newspapers, it's just usually on the inside page of every newspaper, little weather report. We can look it up online or an app on your phone, okay? So the weather forecaster will be there religiously every day and the numerous times a day to forecast the weather. Like looking at that weather chart now probably means nothing to you at the moment, but the L stands for low pressure, the H stands for high pressure. I'll explain to you what the lines in the map mean and hopefully you'll understand it better. You can download loads of weather apps on your phone. It doesn't have to be Met Éireann, there's tons of them. Like I said, it'll be on the inside page of the newspaper. The meteorologists, there's loads of them. You might work in it yourself if it interests you. So preparing the weather forecast, to simplify that down again and recap, we have loads of weather instruments on the ground. We have them high up in the air in the atmosphere, and we have them out in the sea and the ships and in the weather buoys. All of them send information to Met Éireann. Met Éireann has it in the computers. The meteorologist sits down the computer, he simplifies it down and puts it into a weather map and forecast report. They send it to the TV, so they present it on the TV. They send it to the newspaper crowd, like the Irish Examiner or the Corkman. They give it to the radio presenters or they give it to the phone app companies. Okay, so what jobs rely on the weather forecasting to finish up? So weather, it influences what we wear. It influences what activities we do. Can we have sports day? Can we have that match? Do I need a jacket? Do I need sun cream? It even affects our mood. In January, we get less sunshine, very little sunshine. So people can tend to get down and anxious and even depressed. And even jobs it affects. So some jobs really, really need accurate weather, such as farmers. A lot of you coming from a farming background, you need to know, is it okay to spread the fertiliser on the land, spread the slurry? If we're going to get a deluge of rain, that's going to wash it off into the rivers and then that's not going to help my farming later on. Fishermen, is it safe to go out into the sea if there's a storm, maybe hang tough. Tourism, if the weather's going to be bad, they're not going to want to come and visit at that time. Air traffic, can we fly? Wind speeds, turbulence, snow, ice and sport. Okay, so it affects a lot of jobs and it affects what we do as well. Okay, so weather station then, just to finish up, is where we gather all of these weather instruments. They, like you have a sunshine recorder, you have a wind vane, you have thermometers. So weather stations, we have about 25 of them all around Ireland. Okay, and they're all belonging to and run by Met Éireann. I suppose looking at the map there, the closest one to us would be Fermoy, I would imagine. And if you're ever flying out of Cork Airport, you might pass it on your way into the car park. All right, I hope that helps.